I was 18 years old when I had my first experience with the supernatural, like a snap. I was translated, I was time traveled. I don't know how to explain the process, but I woke up somewhere else and I felt fear. And as I envisioned and experienced my surrounding, there was this awful gut-wrenching smell and burnt hair, and it wouldn't even come close to the smell that I smelled. But I knew that I needed to figure out where I am in order for me to be able to possibly get out of here. I felt a presence behind me and I was scared to look. So as I turned, I feel this evil presence behind me. And as I turned to look, not only is there one massive creature in a cloak, but there's these dog beasts. I don't know how to explain them. The minute they knew that I was aware of their presence, they knew I was there. But when they knew, oh, she knows.
Hi, welcome to Touching the Afterlife. Our guest today is Lily, and at 18 years old, she had the scariest, most vivid encounter of her life, so much that it's the sole reason she believes in God. You don't want to miss her powerful story today. So welcome, Lily.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for being with us today. Lily, why don't you start with where you want to start today?
I grew up in the Bay Area. My parents were faithful attendants at a Christian church in Redwood City, California. And at the age of 7, I sat through a sermon where they preached about salvation, sin, heaven, and hell. By the end of that sermon, I knew that I had to accept this Jesus into my life. I didn't know why, other than the preaching just touched me. And I knew that as humans, I understood we needed salvation, is what was taught that day. But I wanted to be saved, but I didn't know this Jesus. So I went home and I asked my parents if they could walk me through the acceptance prayer. And I did. I accepted Jesus. And I was so excited. I was only 7. But at the same time, that moment of accepting Jesus Christ into my life sealed me. And I felt also, now that I can look back, that it put a target on my back in the spiritual realm. I spent majority of my childhood in church. My parents, before becoming pastors when I was 10, would devote themselves to every possible event there was. My mom was part of the worship team. My dad was one of the deacons, and my siblings and I were at church 24/7. During those years, I experienced 2 kidnapping attempts during my elementary school years. Again, at the time as a kid, you don't understand what's happening, but as an adult now looking back, now I can pinpoint the trail of Satan over my life, where he's tried to end my life or where he has tried to, in this instance, kidnap me. I began to have nightmares, vivid dreams of creatures, of things crawling in my room. And when my parents said, we're moving to the East Bay to start a church, we feel God's calling over our life as a family, I was excited. I was excited to leave. I was crushed because I was leaving friends and church behind, but I wanted to leave a place where those 2 kidnapping attempts over my life had happened. When we arrived in the East Bay and began a church, I was fully immersed as a pastor's kid. Now, I was a pastor's daughter, not just a congregant. I was fully immersed into the life of ministry. I had to perform. There was duties that you need to do in order for the church to run, the services to run, the lights, the camera, the sound, the recordings. I was a part of it, and I knew it very, very well. I spent 5 out of 7 days at church every single week. And it became a religion for me. I can speak for myself only, but it became a religion for me of performing, dressing the part. And as a pastor's kid, it comes with this weight of you have to be perfect at all times. The way you dress, the way you show up, the way you greet people, the way you look. Everything about me was constantly criticized and picked apart. So going to church no longer was, I'm going to go worship and I'm going to sing and I'm going to dance and I'm going to learn fun Bible lessons. Now church was, every time I go to church, there's a magnifying glass over my life. And I don't like this feeling. As I grew up in my middle to teen years, there was a lot of congregants at church that found me attractive, people that were deacons, people that had families. And I was 15, 16 years old, being asked by older men in their 30s and their 40s with families if I wished to entertain them in affairs and relationships. Again, as a kid, I did not understand, and I would say no, and I would try to avoid church services after that because I didn't want to be in those positions. But again, looking back, it's the constant attacks over my life in every way, shape, and form. Another form of attack that I faced back then, and my family faced as well, is when you are a pastor and you are actively pursuing change in an area where there is no church, the witches found out about it. And so we would wake up, we would head to school, but there would be dead chickens in our front lawn. There would be blood everywhere that they cut these chickens up and did a ritual. And I didn't understand, 16, 17, I didn't understand why we were constantly under attack. There were voodoo dolls, there were random strings with pieces of chicken. And excuse me, the attacks were so much that we had actual witches come to our church. So right in the middle of worship, right in the middle of deliverance, we would have 3 or 4 groups of witches dressed in cloaks. I remember some of them had vials in the middle of their chest, and they would start pouring out this vial in the middle of worship, and they would link arms together and start saying, their chants. And we would pray against that. They would end up leaving. They couldn't resist. A lot of them were liberated and set free. But I was very aware that there was a spiritual aspect to Christianity. I just had not felt it directly over my physical body. Which leads me to my encounter that I had. It was not a dream. I've been told many, many times by different people, you just had a nightmare. I went through therapy and they told me, well, maybe we need to get you on medication against depression. But science cannot name what God is doing. Science cannot understand the ways of God. His ways are higher than our ways. So if okay with you, I'd like to start with the beast encounter that I had when I was 18 years old.
Yes.
I was 18 years old when I had my first experience with the supernatural. Every night before I would go to bed, I would summon my little dog to come to my bedside, and I would read scripture, I would say a prayer, and I would go to bed. This night was the same. There was nothing different about it. I went to my room, I turned on the lights, I propped up my pillows, I sat in my bed, and I was calling for my dog to come to my bedside so I could say a prayer, turn off the lights, go to bed. I never got to say a prayer. I never got to turn off the lights. And I never saw my dog hop onto my bed. I remember getting in my bed, pulling the sheets, propping the pillows, calling out for my dog, and immediately, like a snap, I was translated, I was time traveled. I don't know how to explain the process, but I woke up somewhere else and I was fully conscious of what was happening. I knew that my body was still on my bed getting ready for bed. I knew that I was still waiting for my dog. When I saw this place that I was in, I was wearing different clothes. I was no longer in my pajamas. I felt fear. And as I envisioned and experienced my surrounding, I was in a massive warehouse. I was in the middle of this warehouse and I'm walking, trying to figure out, where am I? How did I get here? What's happening? Why am I wearing this? When I'm hit with this fear, this cold, My whole body just felt like I had razor burns all over it, how cold it was. And there was this awful gut-wrenching smell, something I had never experienced before. You could imagine all the sewers put together and burnt hair, and it wouldn't even come close to the smell that I smelled that day. Some have said, well, maybe it was a little bit of sulfur. It was sulfur times 100. It was a horrific scent. And as I walked to figure out what was going on, I felt a presence behind me. And I was scared to look, but I knew that I needed to figure out where I am in order for me to be able to possibly get out of here. So as I turned, I feel this evil presence behind me. And as I turned to look, I understand that I'm not alone. Not only is there one massive creature in a cloak, but there's these dog beasts. I don't know how to explain them other than if you have ever seen the movie The Lord of the Rings, there's these beast creatures that come out and attack, the benevolent group. Those creatures in the movie The Lord of the Rings are exactly what I saw in my vision when I was 18 years old. The minute they knew that I was aware of their presence, they knew I was there. But when they knew, oh, she knows that we are here, the barking, the growling, and whatever this cloaked creature was, it was holding them back by chains. Rusty chains. And the minute we made eye contact, it started taunting them. So it started shaking the chains. And the dogs were the beasts wanted me. They wanted to take a bite. And they were lunging forth, but they couldn't go because this thing was holding them back with the chain. And I could tell that this cloaked creature, all I could see was a figure of a cloak, the darkest black you have ever seen, and slimy, tilted red eyes. I couldn't see a nose, I couldn't see a mouth, but it was a cloak shape. And mind you, the size of the warehouse, picture an empty Costco. That's what it was like. And I'm in the middle of it. And this cloaked creature is as tall as half the building. That's what I remember. And they're growling. And my thoughts, I can hear them. You're going to die. This is how it ends. Your mom's expecting you in bed, but this is how you die. Today you die. They're going to chew you. They're going to eat you. That thing wants to kill you. It's going to let them loose. This is how you die. So you brace yourself. And I was scared and I was nervous and my stomach was turning and every part of me was screaming, how did I get here? Why am I here? What is happening to me right now? In the middle of that, as I braced myself for impact, because I'm thinking, I'm just going to be devoured. Nobody can find this place. I don't even know how I got here. Just brace yourself. As I'm getting ready to die, essentially, and coming to agreement with, okay, I guess these thoughts are right, a tiny ball of dust comes into that warehouse. And it was kind of a distraction because here I am thinking these are my last moments alive, but I can see this little tiny ball of light. And it comes into the warehouse. And as I focus on it, and it starts coming down, and it's coming down, the room goes quiet. As that light is coming down, as that ball of light is coming down, it looked like dust, but then turns to light. As it comes down, it expands. And as it expands, I can see the warehouse. I can see the details. And everything goes quiet. That scent goes away. That horrific scent goes away. My body stops shaking. And I realize everything, my body, the beast, that creature, everything that was barking, everything that was growling, silences itself. And this authority comes into the room. And as the light expands, it doesn't come and touch the floor. It places itself in front of me up high, and it expands into this desk. Years later, I've worked at a law firm, so I've seen what the desk of a judge looks like. In that dream, this gets me everything. In that dream, in that vision, in that experience, that ball of light opens to the desk of a judge. And there's a judge sitting there. There's a figure of a man sitting there. And he's at peace. There's this wave and this presence of authority. And I wasn't scared of it, like it's going to eat me or hurt me or strike me. I revered it with this holiness. You are so pure and peaceful and holy that you demand everything in this building, everything in the spiritual realm to silence itself before you. That is your authority. I'm sorry. And I understood then and there, my life is in this being's hands. I understood within me. He didn't say it audibly, and I don't know how to explain it. I've heard other testimonies where you communicate through thoughts. And I understood in my being, Lily, you are at trial. This is your trial. I am the judge, and these creatures here are the accusers. And when it spoke, he said, Lily, they are asking for you. He didn't say, hi, I'm Jesus. Hi, I am God. Hi, I'm here to judge your life. I just understood it in my soul. When he spoke audibly, he said, they are asking for you. And he pointed. And when he pointed, I knew I had to turn and look. Because his light was now in the warehouse, I could see every detail of these beasts. I could see every detail of this thing in the cloak. And they were horrific. They had blood and ooze coming out of really, really sharp fangs. Imagine a shark's mouth, but in a dog's face. The Lord of the Rings, whoever drew those beasts saw them in the spiritual realm, because there's no other way that you could pinpoint every single detail that I saw years later in a movie. It's crazy. He said, they are asking for you. And I said, in my thoughts, they can ask for me, but I don't want that. And he said, what do you say? And I knew that I couldn't sit here and argue with him back and forth. I knew I couldn't sit here and say, I've served church for years. I've held the keys of church. I've been the warden for church. I've set tables. I set up conferences. I've worshiped countless. None of that mattered. He said, they are asking for you. What do you say? And when he said that, they started barking. When it was ready for me to answer, I said, God, I said, let it be what you decide. You decide my fate. I knew that this figure, I knew it's God the Father, but he had this authority. If anybody was going to decide my fate that day, it was going to be him. I wasn't going to leave it up to them. I wasn't going to just give myself up to them. I wasn't going to have my will. I had no say. I had no power in that room. I said, let your will be done. Let it be what you say. And when I said that, I was expecting an answer. I was expecting a verdict. He didn't say anything. He smiled and he gave me a thumbs up. And every part of me was screaming, what does that mean? What does that mean? What does the thumbs up mean? Are they going to eat me? Is he going to let them take me? I'm going to be devoured. The beast started growling. They got up. They started lunging at me. Here they come, right? The creature in the cloak releases the chains. I hear the chains fall on the ground. And I see these dogs fly. They are taking off. They are already taking bites out of air. They want me. They're going to eat me. I braced myself like this. I put my head down and I said, prepare to die. prepare to die. I'm going to die. I'm going to die. It's okay. You're going to die. Right before the last beast got to me, in that vision, I was wearing a hoodie. I was pulled up by a cloak. I was pulled up from the hoodie. I don't know where the hook came from. I don't know. I never saw it in the desk. I never saw a hook hanging. It was an empty warehouse. But right before that beast took a bite, I was pulled up and I was jolted back into my bed. Not a single hair on my body was touched. I was pouring sweat. I was pouring tears. My mom comes in and she says, "What are you doing? Are you okay? It's time for school." But I never slept that night. But I was just about to be eaten. The next week for me was hard. I was scared to go to sleep because I was scared to wake up in that warehouse. I couldn't understand what had happened to me. I couldn't share it. So I began to withdraw. I began to withdraw into my thoughts. And I knew God was real. It marked me. I knew that whatever decision happens in the spiritual realm, God has a say and God oversees. Just like the book of Job, it says that Satan went up and presented himself like the angels, and he asked for Job. Now I understand that these beasts, this demonic entity, whatever it was, went up to heaven and asked for permission to touch my life. And instead of giving in, God saved me. And that wasn't the first time that he saved me. That vision, now that I look back in my life, was a premonition to what was going to be the next 15 years of my life. Trial after trial, circumstance after circumstance. Even after all of this happened, and I had felt God's presence, and I had worshiped, and I had traveled states to bring worship, to preach to youth. Even after all this, I left church. And I left church with hurt. I left church because I couldn't understand why the things in my childhood and the things at church had happened to me when I was so faithful. I had this religion of I'm earning my salvation. I had this religion of I outperform every other Christian. I'm guaranteed a spot at the table. And not just that, but I'm guaranteed a spot without being touched by the spiritual realm. And I was so wrong. So when I left the church, I was at university, fast forwarding, and I was in debate class, and I was good at debating. I could put arguments together. I could deliver why Christianity was the right way, at least morally, and in what the Bible says. But we had this debate, and just like Eve was questioned in the Garden of Eden, there was one of my peers that asked, "How do you know that Christianity is the only way? Maybe it's a true way, but how do you know that it's an only way? Have you yourself talked to God? Did he tell you that Christianity is the only way? How could someone that has only known Jesus and the Bible their whole life tell the whole world that every other religion in the world is wrong?" And when he asked me those questions, I took it to heart. And I was up for the challenge. And I said, "You're right. All of my years, all of my childhood years have been spent in Christianity, have been spent with God. I haven't experienced anything else. I haven't gone out to seek anything else. This is all I've ever known. I accept the challenge. I will explore majority of religions, and I will bring back my verdict." Wanting to be right. Satan studies us. Demons study us. And they know our weaknesses. And they know how to get us. With Judas the apostle, it was money. And with me, it was wanting to be right. Wanting the knowledge. And the question he asks is, how do you know? Reminds me of when Satan asked Eve, did he truly say that to you? So these questions of bringing confusion and bringing doubt is from Satan, is from darkness. So I delved deep. I explored Mormonism. I explored New Age. And every time I explored something different, even Catholicism, every time I explored and studied a religion, I would bring an artifact. I would bring a book. I would bring objects into my home because I was studying them. But unknowingly to me, those objects that I was bringing to my home to study, those books that I was bringing into my home were affecting my home. They were opening portals in dark places, and they were creating strongholds over my life. Over a period of 2 years, I studied every religion, and I purposely left Christianity at the bottom of my list because I had grown up in it. I said, I'm going to focus on these other ones, and then I will finish with Christianity. Funny how that worked. But every single thing that I brought into my home created idolatry. I would start having sleep paralysis daily. Every single night I was scared to go to bed for 2 years because something would come into my room, grab me by the throat, and choke me for the majority of the night. And every night, night after night, the attacks got worse. It was nightmares. I would have dreams that my daughter would be injured or hurt badly, and I could do nothing to save her. I had dreams of severed relationships. My finances were touched. And I couldn't understand. I would ask myself, what is happening to my life? But I hadn't gotten to the point of realizing that these things that you think are harmless are hurting you, and they're tying cords around your very life, and not just yours, but your daughter's and your home and your family. I was diagnosed with terminal diseases. And when the doctors would tell me this, I would cry and I would accept it. And I would call my parents, I would call my best friends, and I would say, I have so and so. My hair is falling out in chunks. I don't know what to do. I don't know how much longer I have. I don't know what's happening. But I didn't stop my studying. I continued. I even was involved with native spirituality, finding out where I come from, my ancestry. I come from central Mexico, and there's a lot of witchcraft in Mexico. There's a lot of witchcraft in native spirituality. And I remember I was desperate. I remember thinking back to my childhood and thinking, you were so naive to think that there was hope in this world. I drove to my parents' house, and I was on Highway 99. When I felt this voice in my head say, get out, exit the freeway. And I ignored it. When I travel, I have a rule of not stopping because it's not safe. Let's just get to our destination. So I continued. I ignored the voice. Me and my desperation of just trying to get to my parents' house. I'm driving down. I have my daughter in the back seat, buckled up. And the voice gets louder. Get out of the freeway now. And I got scared, and my stomach started turning. And I pulled over. I listened. And I parked in front of a Starbucks. And I said, what am I doing? What am I doing? I never stop. It's not my voice in my head. Why did I exit? And I told myself, enough. Get back on the freeway. Get to your parents. Ignore that voice. I relaxed for a minute. I spent maybe 5 to 10 minutes in that parking lot. I got back on the freeway. The minute I got back on that freeway, Not more than 30 seconds had gone by when two vehicles in front of me crashed. I swerved to the left, untouched. I was scared because I had to swerve, but my car was not touched. I was not touched. My daughter was safe. And it was the word of God telling me and warning me, even after everything that I was delving in and exploring. He was saving my life from attacks. Had I not listened to that voice, it would have been me and my daughter in that car accident. And those people didn't survive. That stayed with me. I visited my parents, and I was filled with thoughts of, you're worthless. God doesn't want you. You betrayed him. You left him. He will never forgive your betrayal. You're not the daughter of a preacher. You're not the daughter of God. You're not even a Christian. And even with all those thoughts, I tried to go to church. And I couldn't stand being in church, a place that I grew up and loved and volunteered for and performed. There was something inside of me that could not stand going into church. I would leave church early. Worship was boring to me. And it's crazy to say that because I love worship. I loved worship as a kid. I've always loved singing and worshiping God with my whole being. I would open the Bible and I couldn't understand what I was reading. And it would drive me crazy because here I am, a university graduate. I can understand things. I can put things together. But the Bible that I grew up learning and memorizing, I had no recollection of. I couldn't remember the childhood Bible verses that I could recite before anyone any day. All of that was suppressed. And I would fight to remember. And the thoughts of, you're worthless. Stop trying. He doesn't want you back. Look at all you've done. Look at everything you've become. So I said a prayer, remembering that beast encounter. And I said, God, if you are the one true God, if you are the God of the Bible, if you are the God of Jacob, Isaac, and Jacob, if that same God was the God and the judge that was with me in that warehouse, I ask you to heal my life. I ask you to forgive me. I repent. And I accept you not just as my Savior, but as my Lord. I will allow you to master my life. There's a difference in accepting Jesus and making him Lord of your life. And there's so many of us like me that grew up in church and did the sinner's prayer, but you have not allowed him to be the master of your life. And you cannot have salvation without both accepting him and making him the master of your life. I said that prayer. I didn't feel anything. But that night, I had a dream. And in that dream, God said, clean your home. I cannot be with you in that home. Clean your home. And in the dream, he showed me all the artifacts and all the books and everything that I had brought into my house. He said it could only be me. Clean your home. I woke up and I grabbed trash bags. I wasn't going to give any of this away to Salvation Army or Goodwill. I was going to get rid of it because giving this as gifts to anyone else is just adding to them. adding chains to them. So I did. Books, countless number of books, countless artifacts. Everything went in the trash. I remember throwing the trash away, coming back up, and the last room that I needed to sort was my restroom, because in my restroom I had voodoo plants and Hindu plants and different sculptures in the restroom. I played worship, and I could listen to worship now. This was a process of cleaning my house that took about 3 days. When I finally got to the restroom, listening to worship, clearing it out, I said, okay, I'm doing what you said. I'm cleaning out my house. I have one more request though, God. If you forgive me, if I'm not worthless, I want you to heal me. I want you to heal my voice. I want you to heal these diagnoses that these doctors are professing over my life. And I want to worship you again. I want to follow you, not just for the things you can do. See, as kids, we're taught that you pray to him and he can do a miracle. You need financial provision, you pray and he opens doors. I didn't want the things he could do. I wanted to know who he was. Who are you? What do you like? Just like you know a best friend. I can tell you my best friend's color, what bothers her, her favorite food, her favorite latte, down to the recipe. I wanted to get to know God in that way, not in the ministry aspect of just performing, but I wanted to know his heart. And I wanted to know that I had a part in that heart. So I said, if I'm not worthless, if everything I've done hasn't permanently erased me from your life and your thoughts, please heal me, heal my voice. For about a year before this, I had a nasty cough that I couldn't get rid of. I couldn't strike any chord. I couldn't sing a single note. My voice was raspy, and I couldn't shake it off. The doctors would tell me I was fine, but clearly I was not fine. In that moment when I said, if you will use me again for worship, if I am worthy of worshiping you once again, heal me. I don't know what happened, but I felt this force enter my home. I fell on my knees in front of the restroom and I began to vomit. I began to vomit and vomit and vomit. And the worship was playing because I had played worship as I was cleaning my home. The worship video got louder and the songs on YouTube wouldn't play any ads. It was just worship and elevated and elevated. And it was like spiritual warfare. I couldn't get up from my knees because I felt this presence it was like I don't know how to explain it, like a cleaning, like this wind was sweeping through my home, just cleaning it up and clearing it out. And my voice became free. And the minute I got up, I felt different. I felt lighter. I remembered my verses. I remembered my scriptures, everything that as a kid I would say